let's talk about something quite different. Our President Bola Tinubu has signaled a decisive move in Nigeria's security strategy as he has declared readiness to work with the National Assembly on a framework for state police that guarantees local ownership while ensuring political neutrality. The president stated this at the State House while receiving members of the Northeast Governors Forum led by Borno State Governor Babagana Zulum. State governors, notably Zamfara, Dauda, Lawal, and Katsina, Dikko, Radda, decried their lack of control over security agencies, saying direct authority could end banditry within months. Now, both detailed heavy investments in patrol vehicles, community guards, and logistics, despite Abuja retaining command over security operatives. So these are some of the latest stories from the security aspect. But Olive?
Yes, of course. With banditry, there are several issues. Banditry, farmer-header clashes, and terrorism eroding public trust in government. Tinubu's stance ends years of federal hesitation over decentralizing policing as banditry, insurgency, and kidnappings devastate communities nationwide. However, recall that in June 2025, the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, speaking at a constitutional review legislative dialogue, objected to state policing, arguing that the Nigerian police force should be strengthened and better funded instead of creating state police structures. Now that the president is saying otherwise, being willing to hand some of the responsibility of policing to state governors, what will need to change and be put in place for state policing to thrive? Joining us now is security expert Onyekachi Adekoya. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, and good morning to the viewers and to all of you in the studio.
Mr. Onyekachi Adekoya, you've spoken several times when we've talked about insecurity. You've been of the opinion that the governors have a huge role to play, and we often would lay the bulk of the responsibility wrongfully at the presidency. So I'm sure that you're excited about this new development.
I'm super excited.
All right.
And
so
I will not hide my feelings.
All right. So what mechanisms will need to be put in place to ensure that this is effectively, managed and ensuring that we get the best out of it?
Very good question, Olive. And, I think the president has finally listened to me, I would say, because I'd warned several times that he will go the way of his predecessors if he doesn't take the issue of state policing head on. And to correct the impression, no, he's not the first president to push for state policing. Maybe we are not fully aware. President Buhari did push for it. The state governors, through their legislative arms and then their reps in the National Assembly, truncated the push for the subnational governments to have. Their excuse then was the issue of lack of funding. But again, we heard the president say they've met their revenue target. So yeah, let's go. So what must happen differently? Very clearly, every state must now have, we're working with some state governors, I run a consulting firm, to create what is called a protective intelligence framework. So there must be some design elements into how you ensure public safety, because what we've been doing before now is public order. And so if you go the public safety route, then every government touch points, infrastructure touch points has to have some ring of protection around it. So there's a design element to it in how you build a bottom to top approach, feeding from the local government, from the grassroots into a fusion center to provide the chief executive of the state what we call operational visibility, to have his fingers, on the pie, and to know where the issues are and what's driving those issues, to monitor spend and adjust spend, to optimize that security vote that the state has, to make a better living space for every one of us. So that's what needs to happen, and needs to happen quickly. I think that the subnational governments can begin to make those investments and adjustments in anticipation for the eventuality that we call state police. even if this president does not eventually get it done, the conversations around state police are long overdue. It will happen in Nigeria. It will happen in my day and in my time. I'm very optimistic because really the 1940s, 1930s, 1950s, 1960 assumptions upon which we've been driving national security is failed. You know, continues to fail. It will keep government efforts behind the curve, you know, and allowing nimble, agile, local actors to outpace and outstrip whatever it is that government is doing. So I'm super excited, and that's what needs to begin to happen. Government must begin to prepare for that future which has now come upon us, and they must start now.
Does this in any way hinge on the fact that you've always mentioned that the subnationals have a bigger role to play, and this is like taking a bigger part of the pie where they now have to lead, especially when they have state policing? And how do you think this will come across those who have initially said state policing won't work, especially looking at the fact that we've seen what politicians and every other person in power has done in terms of either using these procedures to outmuscle, be it someone who, in quotes, they really don't like. So how does that play in this part where state policing is going to be affected eventually?
I like to be a realist. We will have problems at the initial stage. It will not be completely uhuru. It may create some little discomfort, but you know, as with the maturing of jurisprudence and even the body of law in any society, the test of anything is in the eating. So we must start. There would be some governors that would abuse office. Some argue that even the US president is abusing his powers. And you've seen some of those excesses being curtailed by the courts. If you make a case for abuse, excuse me, how is this current police structure not being abused? We pay the police a salary through taxpayers' money. If you want protection for your event, you now go and pay the police who you are paying through taxpayer, you know, money to also protect you. So this current structure is even more abused. And the fact that, you know, people die every day and the level of insecurity is clearly beyond what the current structure is able to deal with. Forget about what the IGP is saying. How can one man sit in Abuja with profound respect to the person of the IGP and understand the issues that are happening in maybe in Ota? I don't know if you heard about the village in somewhere in Ogun State. It's not possible, you know. So the wheels are falling off on this current structure. So the naysayers, the naysayers are saying that the state governors will abuse it. And I'm saying that the federal government is already abusing the federal police already. It can't be abused any further. We've seen cases where governors have been removed or their security aids withdrawn. So again, so why don't we say because of that, let's go state police? That if the state police, the governors had their own state police, maybe then some argue that there will be some anarchy, but there will be no anarchy once this is properly done. The weapons classification for state police will be classed in such a way that the federal government will continue to retain might and the escalation of force to ensure the territorial integrity of Nigeria. So high-powered rifles are not necessary really for state police. You know, limited number for their tactical teams. All that can be sorted out in the laws creating the state police. You know, so I don't have any fears. What must happen is that Nigerians must stop looking to Abuja. Our Messiah is not in Abuja, sir. That's not the way the Messiah is. The Messiah of each of the subnational territories is at the level of the state governors. They are the ones collecting the FAC. They are the ones controlling all the levers of powers in the state. We forget that the state governors have more powers than the federal government. As a matter of speaking, governors are co-equals, co-sovereigns with the president. But the difference between the governors and presidents is that they hold title. Governors can revoke CFOs of even federal government parastatals in the state. So governments are that powerful. So the whole powers of the state are invested in the office of the governor. The petty excuse that Abuja is controlling, that's not necessarily correct. The governors have command. I always say they have command, they do not retain control. They are the chief and chair of the State Security Council, where you have every element of force in the states provided by the federal government. They run the initiative, they run the logistics. So governors have everything that they need to get the job done. So the misconception, I'm happy that the misconception will be dealt with once and for all. Once you give them state police, if anything happens to the states, we all will be marching to the state capital to hold the state governor responsible and not look to Abuja. I think that's the accountability and responsibility element that must change in addressing the incessant issue of insecurity.
All right. You also did mention when responding to my colleague's question about the fact that even if you don't see this happen in your time, even if it doesn't happen with this current president, you do see that state policing will be affected in your eyes, in your time, you will see it, right? But what do we need to do to quicken the implementation of this, especially because, I mean, we've seen the IGP's position on state police. We've seen that there have been pushbacks in some regard, and the president cannot all by himself get this to happen. So what needs to happen for us to quicken the implementation of state police?
Well, if I don't need to pray any further, political expediency will get the state police thing to come to pass. So it's very easy. Presidents in Nigeria have been held hostage by cases of insecurity in the subnational level. So I think this president is reading the room correctly. You know, so again, they claim it's a strategy. So maybe this is strategy. Once you you push the buck back to the state governors, it will not become internal insecurity, will not be a campaign issue for the office of the president. And so the Northwest or the Northeast or North Central or South, Southwest will not be able to give the president a black eye on the issue of internal security, if you understand what is happening here. You know, so I think the president is reading the room very correctly. And what needs to happen? It's already happening. Our democracy is maturing. This is the first circle now we're entering where the khaki boys are no longer in the play. You don't have retired generals. It's now the governors, you know, holding all the levers of power in the polity right now. And the bulk of them have always been Democrats. So this is part of the democratization of security. What we had before was a unitaristic, militaristic approach to security. So the over-militarization of internal security, such that if I ask you now to mention a security expert to come and talk about the issue of security, you're most likely going to think about a retired military officer. But the military does stateside security. They don't have the proper appreciation of nuance when it comes to industrial security, internal security. We want to drive a $1 trillion economy. It's not the military that will get us there. You know, it's civil rule and civil leadership in all the arms of security. So I think that the necessary conditions for the emergence of state police are now with us. You know, sufficient has been there, the failure of the current structure. Now the president would have to move. So what needs to happen is he has to sponsor an executive bill, of course, leverage the office of the presidency to sway and move the National Assembly in that direction, and also use the mechanism of his goodwill, as it were, across the states to get this. All he needs is just a third majority across the State House of Assembly and the federal to get this done. I think that if he invests sufficient capital in it, knowing also that he's doing it for his own self-informed interest, you know, like the maxim in capitalism says that a capitalist working for his own interest will eventually work for the interest of every other person. So I think that the other thing that needs to happen beyond the concerted effort by the president is that the media must begin to drum because we're all impacted. We all have villages, we're all on the roads, we're all impacted. We need to tune back the conversation to hold the governors responsible, because if the president wants to move and there's not enough pressure or groundswell from the states, the governors can get away with it a second time. And that's not what we need to, because they know what is coming. They know that there will be no convenient excuse to say Abuja controls it all. So you don't expect, you know, that some of them will be excited. But the ones who have their minds on the people, are the ones we need to begin to highlight and call out the ones who are still living in the past. Lagos alone has, for example, 30 million people. Nigeria is now closer to 250 million people than it was several years ago. So you see, we are highly mobile, highly dynamic. We are now in a geopolitical space where unrest and disruption is the order of the day. We are no longer doing risk management. We are now preparing for uncertainty. So we are in a fast-paced, interconnected world where we can no longer be dealing with issues that should have been done and dusted 30 years ago. State police is not even the complete answer, but it's where we begin to start to address the local emphasis on security as it affects you and I. So I think that every Nigerian must support the president and hold the governors to account to ensure that it can be done within the next 1 year. It's possible. It's possible.
All right.
So let's help to nudge the president on and nudge the governors on in the right direction.
And my final question would be your expectation for how this will influence, or do you think that this move will influence President Tinubu's performance at the polls? We know how policies typically should be able to implement or influence, sway the mindset of citizens at the polls. Do you think that this one will do that?
Olive, just look at the data. Why did Jonathan lose to President Buhari? It was because of the issue of insecurity. Where were the issues of insecurity coming from? The Chibok girls were there, the Kankara, Kuriga, there were incidents all over the place. And then they said he was failing in internal security. And the narrative was, if you bring in a retired general, he will address the issue of security. But you see, the matter goes beyond one man in Abuja. Even the retired general could not do anything, which reinforces what I've been talking about. So absolutely, security is a key issue that certain actors use to gain leverage against themselves. If you look at the statements by Tati Baba Ahmed, when he talked about the politicization of security, basically, you see the current noise coming from Kaduna between then governor and current administration. You can understand how we play politics with insecurity in Nigeria. So clearly, it's a major issue. Should the president take this matter back to the subnational, then we can begin to accurately judge the president's performance on issues like the macroeconomy, issues like immigration, issues on international relations and diplomacy, not on issues or like internal security. So it's a key determinant. Hopefully, if he gets this done, then he stands a better chance of winning 2027, even if some people think that they have enough money to push this matter over the line. But this also doesn't worsen his case in any way.
What do we say, or what do you say about resource disparity? Because this might also be a big challenge now when we look at how the policing can actually be done, the gaps where a particular state has more resources. I mean, take a look at the minimum wage. Some states are not paying the minimum wage. Therefore, how are we going to hinge on the fact that this should be the police salary for the police officers in each state, and then we're certain that each state will be able to pay these police officers compared to when they were under the federal government's umbrella? And then again, my question again, just to reiterate, fears of political interference, political influence, where police officers will be used, especially by politicians as well.
Okay, so let me start from the latter part of your question. We're in a current sorry state where over 50% of our police force are protecting VIPs and politicians, which is the reason why you don't have protection in your village. I don't have in my village. So the abuse you are afraid of is currently happening, where people blare sirens at you to get you off of the road because one God knows who is sitting down in a vehicle, and wants to move. So, I mean, we already bastardized already. We can't go any worse than we are already in current setup. Thousands of people die every year. Just between last year and this year alone, about 4,722 cases of kidnapping has occurred in Nigeria. So I don't know what can be worse than this. So it's already bad. The state police would not make it worse, but it will help us to begin to address the issue locally and importantly, hold the man at the state capital responsible for. Remember, they can mobilize and conscientize to win an election from the polling units to the wards upwards. If they can do that to win an election, they can do that to help us win the battle against insecurity. No, that is a no-brainer. It's not even an issue for discussion. That is where it should be. Now, on the issue of funding, yeah, that's where we suffer from a bit of mental laziness. And the problem of our kakistocracy, not our democracy, comes to the fore. We are led by the worst of us. There's no governor in this country with the wealth of our national resources that we have that should say he cannot pay. You say some can't pay the salaries. Some might even pay more than the minimum wage. What are we talking about? It's about efficiency. It's about innovation, value innovation. It's about opening up your economy. So there's no state that doesn't have mineral resources. What the state governors should do is that as the push for state police comes, they should also push for the review of what the federal government has on its exclusive list. So we've seen steady reform from 1999. So let's reform those things, also bring some things to the concurrent list so that the state governors can also open their revenue basket, which will also allow us to create innovation. We've seen the rework of the tax laws, that will hopefully help us generate more revenue and be more reflective of what is coming from local economy. I travel this country. Some states don't take the issue of IGR very seriously. Some states in this country, all they do is wait for FARC, wait for this thing, and they share budget, and they do nothing. So we cannot continue like this, in Nigeria of our future or of our dream. So this matters like this coming back to the state government is very important. Even the issue of primary education, the federal government should have no business in primary or secondary education, not even in tertiary education. Really, we are now maturing to that point where if you create policy, you shouldn't be the one implementing the policy also at some level for the federal government. Government should provide policy guidance, supervise, and sanction. So the federal government needs to get out from a number of things that it's doing so that we can clearly, the people can see who is failing, who is performing, and the political class can compete on the basis of capability and potentiality of each state, not on the issues of religion, ethnicity, and the nonsense that the political class used to becloud our minds. There's a political awakening that this will kickstart. So I don't agree that, we have almost 70% of our land as arable land. There's huge potentiality of, in Nigeria. Lagos State, for example, is the gig economy of Africa. It's leading with 40% market share of the digital economy in Africa. So digital economy is projected to grow to about $300 billion in the near term. So if you, rather than look at it from the negative side, can we look at it from the positive side?
Absolutely.
What would it be like if we get this done and get this done correctly? That's where I want to live in, not in where we're coming from. We're dying too much in where we're coming from.
Onyekachi, Adekoya, there's no better way to put it. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So let's wait to see how this plays out. Thank you very much, Mr. Onyekachi Adekoya, for joining us this morning on Radda.
Olive, let's not wait. Let's join the conversation and drive it. Waiting, right. We have been waiting too much. Let's join.
Okay, so we are driving it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.